Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is Mark Brody, and I'm back here with Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And I'm real excited to have as my featured guest for today. And this is going to be the first of a series of interviews that I'm going to be doing. The first guest here is Rick Paulin. And Rick, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Rick and I we were introduced through a mutual friend of ours. Kelly Edmonds. She was a previous guest on Coffee Talk with Brohawk, and just somebody that's salt of the earth, awesome. And that's what kind of drew us to having some really good initial conversations. Rick, you and I having some really good initial conversations, and
Yep.
and our first conversation, I felt we could probably talk for hours. On a whole variety of topics. But can you introduce yourself and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself and what you're doing these days?
Sure. I am Rick Paulin, and I am in the collections industry, otherwise known as the ARM industry, accounts receivables management. I've actually kind of grown up in the industry. I started in the front lines, and I do mean being a collector and skip tracing and tracer and working in call centers. And
Yes.
I was able to find the successful path that led me into operations management. And
Hmm.
within the industry, I've had all the operations management positions and grown and got into learning and development, specifically starting out as a trainer.
Yeah.
And the cool part was it's amazing, Mark. You never know in advance where these career paths or these decisions are going to lead.
Yeah.
I'm now in the industry, in the collections industry for over 30 years, and I've been in training and development for like 27, 28 years.
Man.
I've been with organizations. I mean, I started with one agency as a frontline collector and skip tracer, and
Okay.
ended up within 5 years as the national director of learning and development for that agency of 9,000 employees and 56 US offices. I'm not
Wow.
trying to pat myself on the back. What I'm trying to say is apparently when you do the right things at the right time and you work with the right people, these opportunities create themselves.
Yes.
After 11 years with that agency and tremendous growth, and I loved all of it, I decided to move on. And my beautiful wife, she said, "What do you want to do next?" And I'd had a taste, just a taste of working offshore. And I said, "Babe, I want to go back offshore." And so I
Okay.
actually chose to pursue a position. I went over to Mumbai, India for a couple of years and
Uh-huh.
worked with call center operations and collections over there as a vice president. Came back onshore, and we ended up going from Phoenix, Arizona to St. Louis. And after Mumbai, ended up in Chicago. And now I'm thrilled to be in a little tiny town, kind of hiding or tucked away in the northwest corner of the state of Tennessee, where I'm working from home. I'm
Excellent.
still working within the industry and a little bit beyond. And
Good.
we are here on this property rescuing animals, which is my wife's absolute passion. So we've got a little
Yes.
farm going on here. I'm not retired yet, but this is where I'm going to be when the retirement hits. I haven't earned it yet. But learning and development, regulatory compliance has been my forte. And at this time, I'm doing both consulting work and I've also got regular employment going on. What else would you like to know, sir?
Hey, that is and I see behind you, you're an Army veteran too.
I am an Army veteran. I'm very proud of that. And I started in compliance. I worked for the JAG Corps in the
Okay.
Army, which is the Judge Advocate General Corps. And that's where I started getting into the legal field. And I served inside and right out after the military as a paralegal.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your service. Anybody that volunteers to go into any branch of the military, hats off to you. We appreciate it. Um, that's an interesting trajectory from a career. I mean, I started off skip tracing back in the day where you had to manually dial or call
Yes.
411. You
Yes.
know.
You remember the rolodexes, and it was all about who you
Yes.
know, and you had to flip through the cards and call your buddy over
Yes.
at Sears Credit and so forth. I mean, this is what we had to do years ago.
And it made it so fun because you actually got to know some folks, in these at those other companies and whatnot, and you just never know where those relationships were going to take. You
You're
know.
absolutely right. And if they were really helpful and helped you make some money, I remember
Yep.
finding out their addresses and sending Christmas cards every year and so forth. And hopefully that reciprocation was going on. We help them, they help us, but
Yes.
that's all in the past. It's not something
It,
that's done anymore.
it is skip tracing. The collections industry in general has changed so much, where the
Yeah.
arm industry has changed so much. And I would say they've evolved. The industry has evolved, just like every industry. whether it be for regulatory reasons or technological reasons or anything like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a great word because you're right. The industries that even call center industry, collections
yes.
industry, customer service, there's an evolution taking place right now
Yep.
with the entire industry or these industries. That's going to
Yep.
be interesting to see what happens in the months and years ahead.
It's so true, so true. I mean, especially with like, Chat GPT
Yes.
and I mean, talk about untapped. I mean, that's about as untapped as the IVR was 30 years ago.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. With electronic communications, since you're on that subject, you brought up that direction. The fact is, modern day, people don't mind texting or chatting with anybody in a business, but that, believe it or not, they actually don't want to talk unless there's a specific need. They
Yep.
don't want a conversation. They want to control the conversation. They want to
Yep.
have it in very short written format and make it convenient for them so they can
Mhm.
handle it any time. But as far as even getting people to answer the phone anymore, it's not happening very much.
Exactly.
Yep.
I love the word that you just used. People want to be able to control the conversation, control the
Yeah.
narrative. And that's something that even back in the day in collections, that was something that we were taught is, you know, you have to control the conversation. Here's how you control the conversation, and as a trainer, there were some very specific skill sets that I'm sure that you had to impart on your trainees over the years.
Oh, absolutely. We at one point in our training, you got regulatory compliance, and then we
Uh,
get into security nowadays and so forth. But then you got into the technical training, the systems training, whether it
yes.
was using a dialer, using the collections database, keyboarding skills, things like that. And one of the toughest things to impart upon people is the learning of communication skills or soft skills. But
Hmm.
even a few years ago, when it came down to negotiations, which is actually a very personal skill set,
Yep.
we oftentimes gave them a process here: step one, step two, steps three, step four. And it was all about creating leverage.
Yes.
And leverage was part of that control that we were compelled to create. Whereas
Hmm.
nowadays, when we look at customer centricity, it really is about cooperation, education, and information. But there is
Yes.
nothing wrong with that consumer controlling the conversation as long as we together are achieving our objective.
Yes. Yes. I think a term I heard used, back many years ago, verbal judo, you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
um, and it's something that, a lot of law enforcement is well skilled in. It's fine for someone else to try and control the conversation, but once you get them to think about what it is that they're actually saying, and act on things that you're telling them,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a win-win for everybody, you know.
It absolutely is. One of the things that has been important to me within the industry for a long time
Uh,
is, you know, when we work in the collections arena, third party collections, first party collections, and so forth,
mhm.
one of the things that we've been successful in doing, at least in my companies and career path, is actually getting our own staff to quit acting like collectors.
Yeah.
People in the industry, I don't like to use the term debtor anymore. I use the term consumer. And because
Yes.
we're all consumers, then some of the people that I work with and that I
Yeah.
work for may go
Uh,
home and there's telephone messages from debt collectors. We're no different
mhm.
than the people we're calling. There's
Yeah.
no difference whatsoever. But the point is, when we talk about dealing with debtors, I
Uh,
have learned over the years that where debtors come from, it's internal. When I
yeah.
get on the phone and I act like a debt collector, they respond like a debtor. We create the debtors. And if we
Yes.
take off our collector hat and talk to the individual as a consumer, respectfully, professionally, and helpfully, you're not
Yeah.
creating a debtor, or you quote disarm them early on in the conversation because you
Yeah.
don't sound like what they expected and prepared
Yeah.
for.
When I was on the phones, I always had a sense about me of, hey, bad things happen to good people,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and we're all good people. We all just find, some of us just find ourselves in situations that we allowed to get out of control by choice or by situation or something, and it's actually more of a um when you get into those situations, you don't want someone to just continue to beat you down. You want somebody to come in and say, okay, let me help you navigate this ocean that you're drowning in right now.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
that's where I see, um, you know, uh, what we used to call bill collectors. But now, I would call them more customer advocates now, as opposed to anything, because you're really advocating for that customer to or that consumer to go ahead and do the best they can to repay the debts that they owe and help them navigate where the opportunities or assistance programs or whatever the case may be actually lay. Um,
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. You
yeah,
know something, Mark, if you are a consumer and even using in a conversation, sometimes you do butt heads a little bit. You've got an objective, they've got an objective. You want them to pay, they don't want to pay. But
yeah,
when you help the consumer early on
yeah,
realize that, you know what, I want this debt to get paid.
yeah,
And Mr. Brody, you want this debt to get paid.
yeah.
We early on, we realize we actually have the same thing in common. Let's put our heads together and figure out how to get it done.
Exactly. I used to when I used to go into new hire training classes, I used to tell them, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and raises their arms, stretches, and says, I feel like defaulting on a debt today. Um,
Well,
I've never heard of somebody.
similar to that, I don't think there's anybody in the collections industry at any level that
Uh-huh.
early on, when their parents said, Johnny, what are you going to do when you grow up? Daddy, I want to be a debt collector. There's nobody, but we've evolved and we've ended up in this industry. And when you do the
Yes.
right things and you treat people right, it's just amazing what happens.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Who knew that doing a job as a skip tracer or a debt collector was going to
Mhm.
take me to India and take me to the 50 states and do different things at different levels. And now I'm doing more work for the industry than I am for any one company.
That is
And
awesome.
it's just it's exciting, it's thrilling. And
Yes.
you also got to look at this. It is, some people say it's just a job. When they pay me more, I'll do more. But I got to tell you right now, the company I work for and the consulting that I'm doing,
Uh-huh.
this kind of work actually determines whether on Friday night my beautiful wife and I are going out for a steak dinner or we're going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
It's taking care of my personal life. And so when
Yes.
you invest into it, you do get that return. Whatever
Yeah.
you're shooting for, striving for, invest into it by doing what you can and all you can, the best way you can for your company.
You know what? As a former bill collector, someone that's been in the contact center world, if you don't go into work with the mindset of you are an you are a business owner, and that
Yeah.
business is whatever your family name is, and you have to try and make as much money as you can every single day, um, or like you said, and I'm a fan of McDonald's myself. Um, but are you going to be eating McDonald's or are you having steak? You know?
I
Um,
shouldn't have mentioned steak. My wife is a vegetarian, so I hope she
oh,
doesn't
no,
see this.
mine is too. Well, we'll have to meet sometime and grab a steak dinner together and
At a
let them eat
salad bar.
McDonald's. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, hey,
Sounds great.
one of the things that I wanted to talk through with you today, Rick, and we've kind of started touching on this a little bit, is you've had a very successful professional career as you kind of laid out, and I'm particularly interested in learning from you about your thoughts about this particular statement. At this stage in my career, I wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self X. And as a follow up to that, how would that have helped you navigate your career better or
Oh, that's a
differently?
great question. That's a great question. And a lot comes to mind. So the question is, what were the important factors?
Yeah.
First of all, there's one decision that I wish I had made differently going back in my career, but I'm in the arm industry now, and this goes to
Yeah.
before that. You mentioned the U.S. Army. I'm
Right.
thrilled with my service to the Army and to the country. But at
Mhm.
the same time, after doing 6 years at that time, my wife and we decided it was time for me to exit and be a civilian family. I wish I'd stayed and retired from the military. It's that one decision that says I was in there, I was having a good time, I was successful, I was in Germany for 4 years.
Yep.
I really enjoyed it. And I wish I had stuck around to earn retirement, because at that time I would have retired at 38
Yeah.
and then been able to go on to a different career. But then every decision going backwards has a domino effect. And I'm not going to repeat the whole script from Back to the Future,
Yeah.
but everything has that after effect. And had I changed that, that doesn't mean I'd be where I am today. So, and doing
Mhm.
what I'm doing today, and in the life and in the relationship I have today.
Yeah.
Um, I think if I was to look at growing up in the arm industry, starting as a skip tracer and collector, I
Mhm.
would go back and smack myself upside the head and say, listen, you don't know what success is at this point in your life.
Yeah.
It was hitting goals to achieve a bonus so I could go buy this and go buy that, or drive
Mhm.
this car, or get out of an apartment and get into a house.
Mhm.
I've learned a lot over the years, and I've from the benefit of working with some wonderful people, but I've learned, to me, success, it's a very, very intimate and personal
Yep.
definition. It really is. Success at this point in my life is defined as the absolute correct balance between career, family, and faith.
Okay.
Now, it's not I need a certain income level to maintain or sustain the important things in life.
Yep.
But I don't need a giant account balance. I want to be able to work and pay my bills. I want
Uh-huh.
to be able to be done with my work and then focus on my wife and my family. My faith has a proper perspective. And when I've got a wife who's rescuing animals and a life that we enjoy here in a tiny town, and on the weekend, I can actually not do any work related and get on my motorcycle and get some wind therapy. There's a balance there that says, you know what? This feels good.
Yes.
This is what I was working for. And so it's not a particular status. It's a feeling that actually says, this is what I was working for all this time. I didn't know it when I was younger.
That's a great perspective because I think that I mean I definitely see with the next the next generation of professionals coming up. I mean it's about the dollars in the it's, for some people it's the
Yeah,
dollars in the bank account, the title that's on the office or the virtual office, um, and the influence that they can have on others, as opposed to, okay, what's my plan? You know, what am I trying to achieve in life? Um, and you're right, it's going to be very different for each person. Um, it's a very personal
it is.
uh, um, journey. And
It is. It's also internal.
yes,
Probably like a lot of people, we define success early on as what other people saw you in: your
mhm,
clothing, your car, your house. And
yep,
you know something, the vehicle I drive today, the property I have today, which it's none of these are show things or show places. It's that
yeah,
internal feeling that, you know what, this is a good life. Things do still happen from time to time, but the fact
yeah,
is, I put in my work, we pay our bills,
yep,
um, and the rewards are very. When I say intimate, it's just internal. It's very personal, because there are
yep.
things that I do today that mean a great deal to me, but may mean nothing to the next person.
You mentioned wind therapy, and being able to just get out there and just be like have those zen moments or whatever.
Yeah,
And I hear a lot of people that ride motorcycles, that will take those wind therapy trips. It's like they come back just completely relaxed, you know.
and when you say trip, it can be an hour, it can be 2 hours. It doesn't have to be days, but I'm not excluding
Exactly.
any of those.
Exactly. Exactly. So what do you see as the biggest challenges leaders face? And this could be, within any industry. What are the biggest challenges leaders face today versus what you saw early on in your career?
Early on in my career, and you said across any industry, but I've got to only take it back to my personal experience. So I can't
Yes,
talk about the airline industry or so forth,
exactly.
because I don't have the personal experience. I'm going to go back to a word you mentioned earlier, because that was evolution. And there is an evolution taking place within the call center and collections industry that in my perspective and experience is twofold. Number one, I wonder about the future of call centers as a subject. Now, whether that's customer service, collections, or otherwise, but the point is, the industry is evolving to fintech and digital.
Yep.
And even the government regulations, it's a heavily regulated industry, but the government regulations are embracing modern technology and giving us safe harbors and ways to use the technology effectively and compliantly. But that also means, you and I, we grew up for 20 plus, 25 plus years with call centers.
Yeah.
And what we did is we came in every day hungry for money, hungry to hit our goal with that little bit of spittle coming out of our mouth going, where's the money? Where's the money? What? The key players came in and we found the money. But these call centers now are giving way to modern technology and digital platforms that, because people are not answering the phone and they don't want to communicate with people and they don't want people wearing that debt collector hat.
Yep.
That evolution, I think, is going to be challenging. Where is the call center industry going?
Mm-hmm.
Can we define it? And can we lead that charge rather than being left out in the cold?
Yes.
Because there's an evolution there. Now, the other part of evolution for me is with society evolving, and this includes our employees,
Mm-hmm.
there is a greater focus now than ever on DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And so the point is, for some companies, some people, some individual leaders, it is really tough to embrace everything it means and bring it into your organization.
Mm-hmm.
We want to embrace and uphold and really drive forward with everybody, giving opportunities across the board. But these days, there are also so many individual needs coming into society that it may not only be tough to embrace, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, I'm saying sometimes we don't even understand, well, here's a new approach, a new need, a new whatever, but this is evolving almost daily.
Mm-hmm.
And so to embrace the needs of society and where society is taking us, but bring it into a uniform workplace, I find it challenging as well. So, again, call centers and where they're going to be in the future, but
Mm-hmm.
also DEI and moving forward as a unified company, embracing everybody and the skills, the perspectives that they bring to the table. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And you bring up right at the end there, the lens that people are seeing work in organizations in or through is different. And as leaders, yes, you have to be able to be inclusive of and understanding and embracing those different perspectives, those different lenses that people are bringing to the job on a daily basis. Because if you don't, you're going to have things like attrition.
Yeah.
If people don't feel like they're being heard or understood in today's workplace, um, they're going to leave for an organization that better matches their individual belief system, their passions, their whatever. And you're just gonna, as an employer, you're just gonna be running a revolving door.
You're absolutely right. Some people look at DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, as a have to, a need to. My lawyer says we have to. HR says we have to. And I encourage everybody to, if you give it an opportunity, the subject matter as a whole, not any one group or whatever.
Yep.
The fact is, you can learn, you can grow, you can appreciate. And I'm going to take that down to an example level. When I decided to go offshore and I pursued a job offshore, I had been to India one time for 30 days on a project, and that gave me that first taste that said, I want more of this international. When I took that job and I went over to Mumbai, I went over initially without my wife, my daughter, and so forth. I went over there to accept the position, and I didn't know a single person. And now you're going, I don't even like the label third world country. You're going to a completely different culture.
Yeah.
And you can go to India with all of your American standards and expectations, and you can hate every bit of what you experience because it's not your norm.
Yes.
When you go into a different culture like that, it's their norm, and you've got to let go of everything you are used to if you're going to embrace it learn from it, and even have a chance to enjoy it. And so
Yes.
when you go over with not a single relationship and say, just bring it on, it was one of the best moves of my career to realize my experience is only a piece of what business, culture, diversity had to offer. And it was just a tremendous learning experience, but you got to be able to let go of what you consider normal.
Yes. It is I love that. I love that point that you just went through because it is you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah, exactly. You got to allow yourself. And sometimes, when you're I had an apartment on a Marriott property in northern Mumbai. It was
mhm,
still an American hotel chain, but it was a property in India. And
yes.
you would still go back, I'd still go back to my apartment, and I'd be sitting there at night thinking about my day. What did I run into? What did I encounter? And actually learning more about the people I was leading, supervising, working with, partnering with, and
Mhm,
even reporting to.
yep.
And it just gave me this incredible appreciation for what they've been through and what they still bring to the table, and their love for learning and the ability to give them direction, and it being followed to a T, because all they wanted was a chance, was an opportunity.
Yes.
And that was part of the job, was to give it to them. Whereas in some American cultures or whatever, I don't want to pick on a group again,
Yep.
you have a sometimes an edge, an abrasiveness coming
Mhm,
into training that says, I want to work here, but why should I do what it's like a matter of crossed arms.
yeah.
Whereas other people are saying, show me, lead me, and I'll be more than happy. I want to find success and I trust you.
Yes. And building those trusting relationships.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you'd say as a trainer, being able to build those trusting relationships um, in a training or learning and development is so key to creating that culture of wanting to be successful.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that so concisely. You're absolutely right.
yeah. I for you mentioned kind of like where you went to India, and that was such a decisive point for you in your career, just those 30 days, and it made you want more of that later on. But there's a lot of folks, and we see it on LinkedIn, we see it, in the news. So many people are experiencing layoffs. Currently, they're at some sort of inflection point in their career.
Mhm.
Um, what would be your top recommendations for folks that might consider themselves as at a fork in the road or a decision point or an inflection point in their careers, to be able to make those choices that are going to benefit them long term.
When you talk about layoffs, and layoffs often come on suddenly, in fact, pretty
Yep.
much every time, but it's happened to myself. I've had a couple of times in my career path that I've actually been laid off.
Yeah.
And it even at a VP level and so forth, and suddenly your position's been eliminated. And it's shocking and it's upsetting.
Yep.
I've got to say a couple things to that. Number one, I hope people early on
Hmm.
identify their personal core values.
Yeah.
Companies have mission statements and core values, but what means something to you? Who are you? What do you
Hmm.
bring to the table? Then don't talk about a skill set or experience. What is important to you as a person? That whether
Yes.
you're at home or at work, we're going to see in you. And
Hmm.
whatever your core, by the way, if you haven't identified what they are, I encourage you to closely align to one or two core values, that this is who I am, and I'm going to bring it to everything I do in work or outside of work. But don't ever compromise that, because that is a quality that everybody wants to see. Those are the things that are important to you. But I
Yes.
would also say that if you're in a situation where you've got to make even a tough decision, in other words, I didn't decide to leave a company. The company said, I'm now unemployed, and it
Yep.
happens. Your relationships can be your most important factor. And these are people that may still be with the company you just left.
Hmm.
But your relationships are the ones that, even in career building, can be your pathway to success moving forward. It's not just who you know, because when you have a network of people that believe in you because of your core values and the quality you bring to the table,
Yep.
then these are the people that will go to bat for you and say, Rick, I've got a friend over here. Or, you know what? Let me put the message out. Let me do this and let me do that. I'm
Hmm.
not going to put down any social media or tools available, but I have found even as recently as a year ago,
Hmm.
when I have suffered a layoff unexpectedly,
Yep.
that you can hit the grindstone and put your nose to the grindstone and you can say, I need to get out there and apply. And suddenly you see a new position on, I won't mention LinkedIn's name because that wouldn't be fair, but you can see a new position available and you go, wow, this is great. You click on it and it says 139 applicants posted 23 hours ago.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this going, how can you have 139 applicants in 23 hours?
Yes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, do you want to be 140?
Yeah.
No, the point is, these are set up with systemic algorithms and everything else. And despite what I bring to the table, my resume is not even going to get seen. It's going to go through computer scrubs and everything else.
Yep.
And I did everything with them and several platforms to apply and apply and apply, but it was networking with a few headhunters, a few former employees and friends I've made in the industry over the years that have led me to consulting, to doing consulting with a group of people, independent consulting, and even the regular employment I have going on right now, in addition to the consulting, was a group of people that came to me because of my relationships. So
Yes.
it's not a matter of using and abusing these relationships. When you build a good relationship, we all need to exploit them by tapping them every now and then. But you've got to be willing to also do the same for the people that come to you in their time of need.
Yes. I absolutely love that, Rick. I cannot tell you, and I'm sure we're very similar in this. How many people we just reach out to or have a conversation with just because we like having a conversation with them. Um, and it's about creating that relationship that if you have a need that they can assist you with, you're going to be front of mind for them, and vice versa. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. But that's still some of that. I hate to cut you off, but it goes back to those core values. Who
yes,
are you and what do you represent? That's
yes,
the part that says it wasn't just about a job. Here's a guy that I think I want to connect you with that I think you guys could do some good things together.
yeah. I had a manager that worked for me many years ago, and she taught me more as my direct report than I think I could ever teach her. Um, and one of the things that just sticks out or stuck out at that time was I said, look, you are so focused on doing so much for your team, regardless if they're a top performer, bottom performer, middle performer, it doesn't matter. You're doing so much for everybody, and you're gonna burn yourself out. She's like, look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I do for them or what they do for me, it's how I make them feel,
I love
and
that.
I want them to remember my name 20, 25, 30, 40 years from now, and remember that I made them feel good about themselves and the work that they did, and
Yeah.
hopefully I made a difference in their lives and their career, you
No,
know.
you're absolutely right. That is what people recall first. And we've now
Yep.
seen that on television commercials, and I'm not taking that away
Yep.
from you. It's an experience that sometimes we didn't know how to sum up. But that
Hmm.
first element of recollection about a person is how you felt either with them or from them by interacting with them. And
Yes.
the people that you didn't particularly enjoy, they may have high level positions, but you don't tend to reach out because you know what? I wasn't really happy back then.
Yes.
So they may be able to do something for you, but like, no, I don't even want to reach out because I don't want them to know I'm in need. Whereas
Yes.
there's other people that you have the relationship that says this can happen to anybody at any time. And they'd
Yep.
say, Rick, or in this case, Mark, I got your back, buddy. Let me
Yeah.
see what I can do for you.
I completely agree. I completely agree. We want to. I think we've covered a lot of things today, and I want to get us into
Sorry.
the speed round. Rick, and this is my fun part of these coffee talk with Brohawks.
All right,
Um,
go for it.
all right, you ready?
I'm
Let's
ready.
do this.
I don't know what's coming. So yeah, sure.
All right. So, what fact about Rick would people be surprised to learn about you?
fact about Rick. Let me give you two, if I can.
Okay.
Two quick
Okay.
ones.
All right.
Like you mentioned earlier, and I'm very proud to be a U.S. Army veteran, but I'm also a Canadian citizen.
Uh, very nice.
Been
Very
in the
nice.
states for many, many, many years, and yes, legally. But the
Yeah.
point is, I've never run up against a wall that actually said you need to get your American citizenship. So as
Mm.
far as I'm concerned, I've paid my dues. I've earned the right to stay, but at the same time, it's a part of my past. My entire family is still up in Canada, and I'm hanging on to it. And it's not because I put it above America at all. It's just because it's part of my past. But I've actually served the United States of America. Second one, um, the one that came to mind is I spent over 20 years of my younger life raising and breeding Burmese pythons.
Oh my gosh. All right. All right. What got you into that?
Living in Florida, and I've lived in many, many different locations over the
Uh,
years, but living in Florida, outside as a little kid, and I found my first Eastern hognose snake as a little kid. My parents let me keep it, and I found
uh-huh.
a love for reptiles. And not only did it grow, the snakes grew. So I really grew a passion for the giant pythons and the larger breed snakes.
Oh
To this
my God.
day, living in the country, we come across snakes now and then. And the
Yeah.
first thing I want to do, as long as it's safe to do so, is I like to handle them and enjoy them before I relocate them.
And in part of the northern part of Texas, northern western part of Texas, they have this thing called rattlesnake roundup.
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it.
And a friend of mine who is probably not even 5 foot tall, very, very diminutive, lady. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I used to do that rattlesnake roundup all the time." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Um, that I snakes, reptiles scare the hell out of me. So that's an awesome fact.
Yeah, that's just because of your experience to date
Yep.
with them. And I'll let you know, even candidly right now. Now, people may look at this background and say his wife lets him decorate the house that way. No, I'm in a building separate from the house. This is a 110-year-old milking barn that is now my office. But the point is, my house is over that direction, and our
Yeah.
barn is that direction. So I'm in the middle. But right outside of my doors here, hanging on the outside wall, is a 6-foot pair of snake tongs that if I need them or my wife need them, they're
Yes.
right there. Should we find something in the barn, by the pond, behind the house, or whatever? Because
Yeah.
you got to be cautious unless you know the species of snake. So please, by all means, move on. I don't mean to stay
Oh
on the
yeah,
subject
no,
too long.
that's a great fact. I love learning things about people. That's awesome. So if you could choose to stop aging at any age, which would you choose?
If I could stop aging at any age, I think that decision's already made for me
Yeah.
when that's going to happen. I'm sorry to say. The only
Yeah.
question is now is when is it going to happen? And that I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to know.
Yeah.
I used to grow up saying to somebody, I wish I could find out where, not when, where I'm going to die. People would say,
Uh-huh.
why? And I'd say, so I'll make sure I never go there.
Yeah.
But the point is, I'm still enjoying what I'm learning. Do I miss my youthful vigor and the energy that I had with youthful sports and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. But I'm actually loving the life that I have and the opportunities and what my wife and I are doing today, that I've earned this and I don't want to give that up. And it's not just because we have it, it's because Donia and I have invested the time. We're married 22 years,
Uh-huh.
and we've earned where we are today, and we're enjoying it.
That is awesome. Um, my wife always tells me live and love in the moment, you know.
Yeah, I
And
like that.
yeah, don't worry about anything that happened in the past, good, bad, indifferent, but live and love in the moment. Um,
That's a good
I
point.
Yep. So, what's your go-to tactic or go-to thing that you do for unwinding after a stressful day?
A stressful day usually involves dealing with issues at work,
Uh,
sometimes even people at work.
yep.
Unwinding at the end of the day probably involves two different options. Number one, I'm probably going back to the subject more than people care to hear, but at the end of the day, sitting on our back patio in this type of weather right now, the spring weather,
Uh-huh.
with my wife, just to talk, not about work, just to talk. And for
Yes.
me, having a Guinness, just
Nice.
sitting there and sipping on a nice cold Guinness, talking to my wife is a wonderful unwind, and it's a beautiful time. And if she's not available and the weather's nice, get on the motorcycle, get on that Indian and just go for a ride.
Excellent. Excellent. So all of us have things that we really enjoyed about, childhood or being younger. What's a childhood memory that always puts a smile on your face?
A childhood memory.
Yeah.
I hate to say this, Mark, I don't remember much about my childhood. And I'm not trying to get people to go, oh my gosh, he's got issues. No,
Yeah.
I don't. I come from a very fragmented family, which I've already alluded to. My siblings are all in Canada and so forth. Here I am in Tennessee. I
Uh-huh.
came to the United States very early on. So very, very fragmented and so forth. But I will have to say, even with a fragmented family, of the few memories I have of my childhood, and I know that sounds weird, when I was involved in sports earlier on, I mean, even pre-high school that led to high school, I was involved in football, wrestling, track and field, and things like that.
Mhm.
You may not be able to tell that now, but still. The point is, when you're in a team sport, that felt great. It was great team effort. We had some good teams in high school, but when you do an individual sport, which is part of a team, but like wrestling,
Yeah.
when I could see my father's support and my father's pride in my performance, not just a team performance,
Uh-huh.
but that to this day means everything to me because I can still envision wrestling matches that when I won matches, and it didn't have to be a district or state tournament, when I won
Yeah.
matches and saw the pride on my father's face for my performance, it means everything to me to this day.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. As someone that played a lot of youth sports and, my older kids, you know, it was like every weekend I was at a different ball field or hockey rink or whatever. Um, and as a parent, you can look back on it and say, yeah, I kind of get why my dad, or in your case, your dad, had that pride because, as a parent, you see your child being successful in however success is defined. But a light bulb finally goes off, and you're like, and they get what it is that they're doing.
What made it more meaningful? It's interesting that you bring this up because the one thing I wish I'd learned younger, and I'm not faulting my father, is
Yeah.
I never learned self-confidence. And
Mm,
so even this is why when I had victories, I never even told myself, Rick, you're actually pretty good at this. You're not giving yourself enough credit. So
yeah.
when I was actually winning something like that, I was looking for exterior support and approval. And that's
Mhm.
what I got from my father because it wasn't internal, it was external.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
Wow. Wow. So, Rick, we're right at the end here.
All right.
If someone wants to pick your brain or just have a conversation with you, I mean, you are probably one of the most conversational people I've had the privilege of chatting with. I mean, you and I could talk for hours.
I appreciate
Um,
that. Our feelings mutual.
and I really value our mutual connections that said I think these guys need to chat. I'm like, "Oh, I understand why."
No, we need to
um
get on the golf course, dude.
yes, I was doing that yesterday. If someone wants to pick your brain, how can they go ahead and get in contact with you?
What I want to do is I will invite anybody to go to my LinkedIn profile and you can message, we can connect and so forth. I'm not trying to be evasive. One of the things I've learned though, as soon as you publish a personal phone number on a video, suddenly I'm not only getting calls about my car's extended warranty, but now it's also for, no, I'm getting these still every day. And if you're
Yes.
getting them, you're not alone because I can't stop them.
Uh-huh.
But let me give you two email addresses. And there's a primary line of consulting that I do with ARM Compliance Business Solutions. The president of the company is Sarah Walgerman. She's known throughout the ARM industry, and she's brilliant in the area of regulatory compliance. For her
Excellent.
organization, I am the learning and development advisor. So that email address to reach out to me, not Sarah,
Yep.
is Rick at ARMCBS, which is ARMCBS.com.
Okay.
And then for my own independent consulting, which is anything, even whether it's call centers, any outside activities, there's learning and development in everything, and even performance management.
Uh,
My independent LLC is called ARM Learning Solutions.
okay.
And
All
so
one
there's
word.
partnerships going on here. And that email address is now this one's a tiny bit more complex, rick@arm-ls.com.
Fantastic.
Did I say
Fantastic.
ARM Learning or did I? Yes,
Yeah. Armlearning.com.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's it. It is arm-learning.com. Sorry, oh my gosh, I'm on camera right now. It made me so nervous.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Well, Rick, thank you very much. I mean, you have been an amazing guest on this episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk, and I appreciate the time that you and I have gotten to get to know each other virtually, and I am looking forward to some time on a golf course with you.
Sounds great, Mark. I look forward to it as well. Let's make it happen, or else it's not going to happen.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I hope everybody viewing this has enjoyed this episode. If you have questions, comments, there's something that you liked, please, send those comments over. We'd love to hear them. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thank you again, Rick.
Thanks, Mark. Take care, everybody.
All right.